Let's try this again. Oh, I see you.
Okay, yay.
Oh, okay. Well,
No?
it's still the circle. I guess, do you want to just start?
We'll just start. If you can hear me,
Okay.
hopefully
Yeah.
it'll pick up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So everybody who's here so far, thank you so much for joining. I don't know if you guys got to see the live earlier today with Eliza Pilichowski, and Rebecca did the interview. I actually didn't make it, and I watched some of it. I didn't even finish watching it yet, but I heard it was amazing. If you did watch it, give them a little shout out. Rachel, were you there? Or did you see it?
I was. I mean, I wasn't there live, but I watched it afterwards.
Okay, awesome. So I was hoping we could kind of talk a little bit about what she spoke about, just to do a summary and then jump into what we want to talk about. So would you be able to do a quick summary?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so Alyssa was great, and she was basically just talking about how to be, I mean, she covered a few topics, but she talked about how to be like an active listener, an engaged listener, which, you know, she gave some ideas of like eye contact, nodding, kind of mirroring what the person's saying, repeating it back. And then she also talked about like how to reach out to someone who's going through something difficult. And a lot of the time we feel like, oh, maybe they don't want to hear from me, or it's been a long time and I didn't reach out to them. And she said, like, when in doubt, always send that text or let someone know you're thinking of them. Or, you know, even if you feel like it's too late, you could even apologize and say, like, you know what, I should have reached out sooner. She just was talking about basically like being there for people and showing empathy and showing up, you know, and that's important. She was saying that we have to just kind of like not think about ourselves and think about the other person. And sometimes just being there physically, it's not even about saying anything, just being there physically is enough. And that, I think, it was such a great message, because a lot of the time we don't end up, you know, putting ourselves out there and like reaching out to someone because we don't know what to say. But she was saying you don't have to say anything. Just you being there and showing you care, sending a text, sending a package of chocolate, and saying, I don't know what to say. That's good enough, you know? So I thought that was a great message.
Yeah. I know sometimes for me, I will like overthink it because I'll be scared to be too awkward about something, or I'll be nervous that I'll say the wrong thing and hurt them more. But I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I want to watch
and
the whole thing, so I'm excited.
Thing. I love that she said this also. She said, if you said the wrong thing, like if you make a comment that you're like, ugh, that was really bad, own up to it. Apologize. Shoot, I shouldn't have said that. You know what? I didn't realize. I see that hurt you. I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to say the right thing. We're allowed to be honest and tell people we're trying to be supportive. You know? People said they can't see me. You could just hear me. I hope the internet will. I'm not taking blame for this. I have good internet. People are saying
it's all your fault. Everyone who's watching.
Whatever. If you can hear me, I think that's good enough. But yeah. So that's which I thought was great. And I guess the side is what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah. So do you want to give an intro to the flip side to what we're talking about tonight?
So the topic tonight was boundaries with empathy. And basically that's the flip side. How that is the flip side is because Eliza was talking about showing up and being there and, you know, not trying to say the right thing and just being like a present person. Sometimes it can get like sticky when somebody is going through things and, okay, only blurry face, but you can hear me. Perfect. Great. But sometimes when people are going through things, sometimes we feel like burdened to do more than we should, or like we want to be fixers, or we want to like do everything for them. And sometimes that gets a little bit, it gets a little bit much, right? For you, not just for the person that's going through things, but for you, we kind of start overstepping like what our responsibilities are. And that's not a healthy thing. So I guess we kind of want to know tonight, when someone's going through things, like what is my responsibility? Like, when is it being like a good friend and a good person? And when is it becoming like I'm starting to like carry that burden for them, or I'm like trying to be the therapist when I'm not a therapist, or I'm trying to like take away their pain when that's not really my place and that's not my role.
Yeah. So it's all about kind of finding that balance, and it's really hard to know the balance. So it sounds like you
Yeah.
have some tips for us to be able to know the balance.
Yeah. Well, so I think, I mean, I guess like just a few points that I wanted to make were really like if you read any like Brene Brown books, like you'll know that she's like all about being compassionate and showing empathy and being kind and showing up and wholehearted living. But her whole like everything behind, and she's all about connection, right? That we have to have connection with other people, and like that's a basic human need, right? So it's not realistic to say like, well, don't care about other people's problems and just focus on yourself, and like that's just not a human, that's not a good quality, and that's not natural. You know, it's natural to be concerned and to show empathy and to feel other people's pain and to want to take it away. But I think that what she says though is that the most compassionate people are also the most boundaried,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we have to we assume that we can be more generous and loving when we are able to say like, okay, I know this is where I have to step back, and I know this is not for me to be involved in anymore, you know. And when we kind of put those boundaries in place, then we're able to really show up for people because it's coming from a good place, it's coming from a loving place, it's coming from the right place. So I think that that's super important to know and acknowledge, is that not every problem is ours to fix. And sometimes when we step in and we try to take away people's problems and fix them, we only make it worse. So that's not kind and loving. That's enabling or enmeshment or codependency or serving your own selfish need of like not wanting to have people around you be uncomfortable or in pain. Really, you're hurting them. You know, so I guess like the easiest example and kind of one that people understand the most is like when I talk about like kids and parenting. You know, I'll tell parents like, don't save your kids from fights with their friends and, you know, things in school. Like, you don't do homework for them. Like, they have to do it. You don't take their tests for them. And maybe some parents show up and try to do that, but you should not be stepping in and trying to take over your child's life. You're taking away such a valuable learning from them. So yes, it hurts you to see them fighting with a friend. And yes, it hurts you to see that, you know, their friend is leaving them out. But when your child is 13, 14 years old, are you going and knocking on that parent's door and being like, excuse me, include my daughter or my son in your get together? A, that's humiliating to your kid. B, didn't do anything, right? Like, you want your child to learn how to navigate those difficult situations with their friends. You want them to learn to see that, you know what, I can get in a fight with my friend and I can be left out sometimes and it hurts, but it's okay. We don't always have to feel good all the time, right? And that's another thing. We live in this society of like, we're never supposed to be uncomfortable or sad. We always have to be looking to be happy and okay. And that's actually like not the goal, right? We have to sometimes learn, like Rebecca just said here, it's okay to not to be okay. And we have to sit with those uncomfortable feelings. And I think that that's also like a boundary that we need to make in our own lives. Like, if people are sad and uncomfortable, I don't have to say anything to make it better. I can just say, I see that you're sad, or I see this is hard for you. And like, I'm here for you. You know, I'm sad with you. I don't have to try to make them laugh and make jokes. And you're sad. That's okay. You know, I get it. Right? So I think that's like a really important thing, that we have to learn to kind of like sit with uncomfortable feelings, and we have to learn to respect other people's need. It's a healthy need to sit with uncomfortable feelings. The goal is not to feel good all the time and feel happy. That's not life. So I think that that's like the first thing I wanted to talk about. I also wanted to say, I just wrote a few notes down here. That yeah, setting boundaries, it's stressful, right? Especially if there is someone that you want to like fix what they're going through. You want to make things better. So it's stressful to step back and like watch someone suffer or watch someone be sad, or, you know, if you feel like, I know I could fix this for them or whatever, but it's not your place always what people are going through. So I think sometimes we have to like step back and we have to just kind of like start practicing self-care, right? And self-care doesn't mean like what you eat and exercising, whatever, right? Because people who eat right and exercise also have stress. Self-care means boundaries. It means managing like how we treat ourselves, how we balance our lives, the fun we have, the rest we have, companionship, what to get involved in and what things we choose to step away from. That's what self-care is. Self-care is boundaries. It's not just like, I ate a salad for lunch and I, drink a lot of water. It's how we take care of ourselves and our relationships and our quality of life. So I think that that's also important to remember, is that even though boundaries will feel stressful for you and sometimes they feel wrong and selfish, it's not wrong and selfish. It's necessary. It's, you want to say something?
I have a question about that. And you want to finish the thought first, though?
I mean, I think I did, but it's necessary.
Okay.
Like it's
Yeah.
something we have to do. And just because something's uncomfortable doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. So about the boundaries and self-care thing, sometimes there might be a situation where you might not, or a person might not know when they're not doing the appropriate self-care or appropriate boundaries, but not realize until it's too late. Right. Are there some steps that people can think of that can help them be proactive about knowing when to, know when it's too much? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That question.
So I always say that, like, when you know that you're overstepping, like that you're taking on too much of a person's problem, when it's really not your problem to fix, right? So like if someone is having marital problems, your job is not to listen to all of the problems that are going on and give them advice and try, let me talk to your husband and oh, why don't you guys go on date night, and then text them, how was date night? Like, you're getting too involved. Instead, it could just be that you're an ear that listens. Like, that sounds hard. Have you thought about going to therapy? There's this great book I read. There's this awesome blog that I follow. Maybe you can go there and like read about that. You're not telling the person, don't tell me your problems, I don't want to hear about it. But you're also saying, like, this is a lot for me to carry. And like, I can't give you the advice that you need because you cannot. Even if you're a therapist and your friend is telling you about this stuff, as a friend, you're not objective enough. Even if you have that mental health background, I will never counsel my friends on their personal issues because I'm not objective. They're my friends. I know their spouses. I know their kids. I know what goes on. I can't possibly give good, sound advice from a mental health perspective. Sometimes I'll give advice from like being Rachel, right? But I'm not going to play therapist with them. And I know that that's my boundary. Like, I'm not going to treat them as like a client and give them advice that I would give to that client because I can't do that. So I know that that's my boundary. And I'll say to them, like, wow, if there is something going on, that sounds like a lot. Maybe you should talk to someone. I know someone who's great and who does this and whatever it is. So if it's a problem, it's really not yours to carry, which the majority of our friends' problems, they're not ours to carry. And even our parents' problems or our siblings' problems, they're not ours to carry. Our spouse's problems, we're there to be supportive. Right? The only person that you're responsible for is yourself. But that doesn't mean that you're not supportive of other people and you don't guide and help. It just means that you don't take on their issues and that you know when to say, like, you know what? I think I'm getting too involved, or I think I'm getting too emotionally invested. I need to step back. Sometimes that takes learning the hard way. I know definitely for me in my own life, I have had to learn the hard way. Because like I said, when I'm not in therapist mode, I'm a human, right? I've made mistakes where I've been too invested emotionally in someone else's issues. And I got a big slap in the face to remind myself, like, this is not your place, Rachel. Like, this is their problem to fix, not yours. And I think that sometimes we have to remember that,
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
I think what's yours and what's not yours. And the majority of the problems are not yours to fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We had a few questions in the, I don't know what you call it, but comments. Do you want to start answering those, or did you have other points you wanted to get to before we start?
I'm gonna look. Sometimes I feel like I care too much because I step in and try to help, and then in the long run it hurts me. So I feel like I say this all the time. Like, it's not that you care too much. It's that you feel you are afraid to disappoint and you feel an obligation to like help and fix. And if you don't, then like there's something wrong with you. And there's like a fear of losing connection with someone. If I don't fix this for them, like I'm going to lose them or they'll be disappointed in me or, and again, that goes back to what Brene Brown says about like connection and shame. And like, that's why we don't have boundaries sometimes. We're afraid to lose connection. And that's a shameful thing to not be connected with people and not have relationships. So it's not that you care too much. It's that you don't have enough of a boundary to say like, I care too much about you to take this on as my problem. This is yours. You can handle it. I'm here behind you, cheering for you, but I'm not taking it on as my own because that's not helping you, And then what happens is when you take on people's problems, then we have that whole idea of no good deed goes unpunished, right? I took this on and I tried to help you, and then you were angry at me because I did it wrong, or I lost my friends because I was too much involved with you or in helping you, or I took sides or whatever it is. No good deed goes unpunished comes from a person who doesn't have boundaries. If you feel like every time you do something, it gets thrown in your face, you need to look who you're doing good for and what are these good deeds that you're doing. Maybe they're not good deeds. Maybe it's a real boundary issue. How do you know where to step in, when to step in where kids are concerned? If they're in danger. So if a kid is being bullied, or God forbid there's a physical threat, or that they're starting to feel, God forbid, depressed or suicidal, or like they can't handle it, again, that's where you would step in and take more of an aggressive approach. But really you want to encourage your kid, like, you can handle this, you can do this, I'm here behind you, and if you need me to make a phone call, like, I'll do it, tell me. But a lot of time your kids don't want you to. They don't want you to do that. They just want you to listen. And when they're venting, they're not looking for a solution. They're just looking for support. What if helping other people with their problems makes me feel good and doesn't hurt me? For example, giving friendship advice. Okay, so that's not a boundary issue. That would be like normal helping. Giving your friend advice who's going through a rough patch, fine. But again, if it's like a constant, you're on the phone till midnight and you're going and talking to the friend for her and you're buying cards and writing them and sending them to the friend to try to repair the friendship, that's overstepping the boundary. You're not helping. How involved should you get with your kids' homework? I mean, that depends on the age and like what their level is. But again, you want to encourage independence, not like having them depend on you. And how do you set boundaries when it comes to family? It's hard with families, specifically parents, because you love them and I feel like their problems become my problems. So boundaries with family is the hardest to set. With friends, sometimes it's a little easier. At work, it's easier. Family is very difficult because there's so much emotion and so much emotional baggage with family. But their problems are not your problems. And that's something that, again, we all have to kind of learn to accept. Like, we need to take responsibility for ourselves. And we get to choose what our responsibilities are. And then we have to decide, like, I can't do it all. What are my problems and what are their problems? Like, my parents, if you're an adult child, my parents and my sister, like, that's their stuff. I'm not dealing with what they're going through with my sister. That's not my business. I'm going to focus on my family. Or my brother and my sister, their fight, my adult siblings, their fight. I'm not getting involved. I'm not going to triangulate. I'm not going to, listen to my sister back to my brother. I'm going to say, guys, work it out. Like, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to be stuck in between you guys. And saying, I'm just going to focus on me. Not saying, guys, I don't care about you, or mom and dad, I don't care about you, but knowing what's your problem and what's their problem. Does that make sense? Can you give the example of bullying for which is right to get more actively involved? So, I mean, I don't want this to be like a parent thing. That's like a whole separate thing. But if your child is being bullied, right? Threats, physical threats, sending texts, leaving them out, targeting them specifically, and your child can't stand up for themselves, like you've given them the tools and it's just not working, that's when I would say that's when you get more involved and you speak to a teacher. And that just means you notify the teacher what's going on and you say, please keep your eyes out for this. Like, make sure my kid's okay. And then if that doesn't work, then you go to the principal and you say, I spoke to the teacher and this is still going on. Somebody needs to look, someone needs to see, then you just keep like stepping up the ladder, but all at the same time, still empowering the kid to know how to respond and what to do. But yeah, I think that technology also, like as much as I love technology, I always take the opportunity to bash it. But technology created this illusion that we're like this device that we always have to be on, right? Because that's what it is. Our phones are next to us and we're always available and we're always, reachable and they're never off and it's 24 hours. And I think that that's kind of created also a problem with us learning how to have boundaries, like when to shut ourselves off. So thank goodness, right, for Shabbos, right? Because that's like forced boundaries. I am not reachable. I am not involved. I am like 24 hours of like nothingness, right? That's like a boundary. And I always say also, like the Torah, right? The Bible, one big book of boundaries. Halacha is Jewish law is all about boundaries, right? Like God himself, God as a being, is all about learning to set up boundaries, right? How tall is the sukkah? How long do we celebrate a yontif? How much matzah do we eat? What kosher, the laws of kosher, right? What we can eat, what we can't eat. When we eat certain things, when we don't eat certain things. When we pray, when we don't pray, when we're happy, when we're sad, how long we mourn, when we should pick ourselves up, when we read from the Torah in synagogue, like so many different things that guide our life, right? And we are within these like boundaries of what we should allow and what we should not allow. Even our relationships are guided by the Torah, by the Bible. Like, so we're a very boundaried people. Like this is not something that's foreign to us. It's not like a sin to have boundaries. God has told us himself, like by giving us the Torah and Jewish law, you should be setting up boundaries in your life. And what do those boundaries do? What is the intention of halacha and Torah, right? Of Jewish law and the Bible? If we follow those laws, we will be living a fulfilled life. We'll be good. You have a baby. I know you're not bored. We'll be good people. We'll have better connections with ourselves, with God, with our community, right? That's the purpose of it all, to enhance our lives, not to put up walls and not to make us disconnected, but to connect us more. So I think that's like the perfect analogy. Like think about, does Torah, I hope not, does Jewish law hold you back? Not supposed to, it's supposed to enhance your life. So I think that's
that connection. I never thought about that before.
Yeah. It's really like the book of boundaries, I'm just seeing here, I saw another question.
There's another question, yeah.
How do you deal with family and friends who vent to you about their life where you may be more fortunate, easier kids, or more money? I mean, so you can listen to them, like Alisa said earlier. You can listen to them, and I don't think you have to feel bad about what you have. You can listen and you can empathize, but I don't think that you have to take on the problem. Like if they're saying like, oh, money's rough, like are you going to start like quick paying like your bank account to them? No, your boundary is I'm going to listen and I'm going to say like, that sounds rough and like I hope things get easier, but it doesn't become your problem. It makes sense. It's just hard. I'm an adult child. I'm 25. My mom is terminally ill. So her problems are so overwhelming. I don't know how to set boundaries with that situation. So that's hard also. Like your mom's ill. So I'm not going to tell you not to help out and not take care of her and not do whatever you can when you can do it. But at the same time, like you're not her doctors, you're not the nurses. Like you have to do what you can, but also take care of yourself. You're a better daughter and a better support to her when you're keeping your boundaries, of making sure that like you're able to be there for her and not be angry at her. I don't want you going to her house to help her and then the whole time you're slamming cups down on the table and making her feel annoyed that she's sick. Like that's not helping her. That makes her feel guilty and bad, and you don't want that to happen to the relationship. If you want to be helping your mom, you want to be helping from a good place, not from like, oh, my mom is sick and now I have to help her and it's getting in the way of my life. And if you can't do it, send someone else, or maybe once a week hire someone to come help her. That you're showing I care and I want to be there for you, but I also have a family to check for, to take care of, and I have a job that I can't always take off of, and I also have my boundaries. It doesn't mean I don't love you and I'm selfish, but it means I'm doing the best I can. Why is there a feeling of guilt? Again, it comes from that people pleasing. We think that we always have to like make everyone happy and we can't disappoint people. And I think especially depending how you grew up, like if you were afraid to disappoint or there was a big consequence if you disappointed, like that's going to affect how you feel when you have to say no to someone. You know, if you didn't like hearing no as a kid and you heard it a lot and there was a lot of shit and whatever, you're going to feel bad to say no to other people. You're going to want to yes them because you don't want to feel, you're projecting a little bit like, ooh, I know how it feels to hear no. Like they probably feel the same way, but it's not necessarily the truth. So you got those are the questions. Did you have anything that you wanted to ask?
I mean, the topic of guilt is really interesting to me, and, you know, how to get rid of that guilt. I mean, it just seems that it's so hard I mean, it's nice to be able to identify why we have a certain feeling, but then to be able to actually take that and figure out you know, how to get rid of that and how to change. I feel like that's part of the biggest challenge.
Right. So I think the biggest thing to remember is like when we feel like we want to take on someone else's problem, I think we need to look at what will happen if I make this problem mine. So let's say you have someone in your family who is having like legal problems or has like health issues or, you know, or mental health issues. And you feel like you want to be their advocate. You want to like make all the appointments and make sure they're compliant with their meds and call the psychiatrist and Google all the medications and all that. So in the beginning, that might be helpful. You want to set them up for success and you want to connect them with, you know, let's say the right lawyers or whatever it is that they need for information. But then if you keep doing that, what are you doing for them? You're not teaching them to advocate for themselves, crippling them. And so if let's take the mental health issue, if there's a mental illness, right, then what do we want for someone with mental illness? The goal ultimately is like, you should be able to live with your mental illness. You should be able to function in society. You should get on those meds. You should get into that therapy. You should have whatever you need, and you should be able to be okay. I'm not abandoning you, but I want to teach you to advocate for yourself. I want to teach you to think for yourself. I want to teach you to know if you don't like the meds you're on, I'm not calling your psychiatrist. You should call and you should explain what you're feeling because it's not my body. So if I keep doing that for you, you're never going to learn and you're never going to feel like you're capable of doing it. I'm taking away power and courage and opportunities for like confidence and good things when I do it for you. So I think that the guilt that we feel, we should replace it with, what harm am I going to do if I make this my project? I'm going to be stealing opportunities for them to do it themselves and see that they're capable and that they'll be okay without me doing it for them. 100%, if you have a question, call me. I'm happy to give you ideas, but you can do this, you know? And so, Rebecca, you just asked Brené's idea of how we mix up shame. So guilt, right, that's actually a great question. Guilt is when we do something that like we know is wrong and we say, oh, that wasn't such a good idea, and we like try to fix it, right? So like we know the action wasn't so great. So like I screamed at my kids this morning, like, ugh, like that wasn't nice of me. I'm going to apologize to them when I get home. Shame would be, I screamed at my kids this morning. I'm the worst mom. I have the worst temper. I'm messed up. I'm never going to be okay. I'm such an angry person. I'm such a loser. And all my friends are better moms than me. That's not helpful, right? So shame is never a helpful feeling. Guilt can be like a motivator. Like, okay, you know, I wasn't so nice and like I feel bad about it. I'm going to try to be nicer. I'm going to try to be more aware of my feelings. So sometimes guilt is like a good motivator for you to say, I feel guilty that I'm not helping my mom and like I don't want to abandon her. But what's a healthier way for me to help her? What can I do instead of taking this all on by myself? What can I do that'll still preserve the relationship and my sanity, right? And another thing to think about also about that guilt is like, how are you going to feel about this person that you're helping when it's all said and done? So if you're helping your sibling or your parent with mental illness or with some kind of health issue, Are you going to like love them in the midst of it all? Or are you going to hate their guts and feel resentful and feel like you never want to see them again? And I'll tell you from my experience professionally, it never ends up good. It chips away at the relationship, and there's resentment, and there's ill feelings and broken relationship because boundaries weren't set up. And I think that that's like important to think about. Like, if I value this relationship, I'm going to make sure that I don't make this all me and all my problems. So I think that's important. And actually something that I heard, a client of mine told me about it, and then I went and listened to the shir myself, but Rabbi Shai Schechter actually just spoke about boundaries with chesed. And I actually put the link to his talk in my boundaries talk on YouTube. And he was saying that there's this like verse in the Bible, there's this pasuk in the Torah that says, Anan kashur al ha'ohel, right? In Chayei Sarah, that there was like a cloud that like lingered over Sarah's tent all the time, right? And he says, like, we learn, right? The Medrash tells us that it was like this heavenly cloud that was like over her tent, and it was like Hashem, God's presence was always there. But he says that the Sefer Sridei Eish basically says that what that cloud was Sarah was saying to Abraham, she was saying to him, Abraham, you want an open home? You want to invite everyone in? That's totally fine. But I'm putting up this safeguard, and I'm putting up this fence to protect our family. This thin layer that's over our tent, that's kind of protecting us. We decide when we let people in and when we keep people out. And she was taking responsibility for like having these boundaries and safeguards for her family. And that's kind of what his interpretation was. He said that sometimes we think that like chesed or doing kind deeds means that we always have to have an open home. We can never say no to guests on Shabbos. We always have to be involved in every community organization. We have to do everything. But sometimes it means also knowing when to step back and when to say, you know what, let's just have like a weekend like where there's no company. It's just us and the kids, or it's just us. You know, we don't always have to have 45 people at our table. You know, we don't always have to be involved in every single charity that's, you know, going around. I don't have to be involved in every event at my synagogue. My kids need me. My spouse needs me. Like, that's what we need to do. So I think that that was also like another instance of where we learn in the Torah and the Bible about boundaries, that like these are a good thing. Even Sarah, who Abraham was known, right? He was known for his like bringing in guests and having this open tent, right? He had all those doors all around, anyone could come in. Even she said, you know what, there's a time where we're not going to always have company. Like sometimes it's just going to be us. We need it. You're always out doing your kiruv, and like we're struggling with infertility. We need a break sometimes, right? So I think that was like a really nice interpretation and a reminder of like, yes, as Jewish people, we believe that chesed is important, and we believe that we should always be giving and doing, but there's also giving and doing for ourselves. And you can't give and do if you're not being compassionate with yourself. You can't be compassionate with other people. You can't give to other people what you don't have. So I think that that's something also, when you're feeling that guilt of like, oh, I should really be a giver, you should also be taking care of yourself. And if you're going to feel bitter and angry and resentful and the relationship is going to be like destroyed, that's not an act of kindness. It's really like criminal, you know, it's not nice. So.
Well, I think there was another question, but I was thinking, maybe you answered this already and I'm just exhausted. But what if, I mean, there is that aspect to it of, you know, you're not helping. I mean, it's better if they can do it themselves and the responsibility should really be on them. But are there situations where sometimes it really feels like that person literally can't do it if you're not the person who's there for them?
I mean, so again, it depends on the situation, but then you have to ask yourself, like, do I want to be the only one that's responsible for this? Is there someone else who can carry this burden with me? Listen, sometimes there is a family member who really is like mentally ill, and like they would be homeless if you didn't step in and take care of matters for them, or a parent who's so sick that they really need you. But then you have to say, like, is this only my burden to carry, or can I share it with other people in the family? Can I reach out to my siblings and say, guys, like, I don't want this to just be on me. Like, mom needs help, or, you know, Dan needs help. Like, I need you guys to step up. And then if they don't and they refuse to, then you have to look at, like, okay, what other avenues can I take to make sure that this is not just for me to do? Because I'm going to end up resenting my siblings and hating them, or, you know, resenting the person that I'm helping. Because there are situations where the person really needs you, and like without you, they're going to fall apart. But again, you have to find someone to share that burden with. It can't just be on, you know, it's not always black and white. And that's why that's why I always say, like, talk to a therapist. Like, if you're not sure, or you feel confused, or you feel conflicted, go for like a session or two and just get like an objective third-party opinion, like some guidance on how you can handle it so that you're still present and you're still helping, but you're also preserving your sanity, you know? Important. So an answer, what if the other person makes you feel obligated to help them, even if you try to put up boundaries? Like, that's on them. They can try to make you feel obligated, but you have to just take responsibility for your feelings. Like, I know that you think I should be helping you with this, but like, I'm not, you know, and I'm sorry that you're disappointed, and I'm sorry that that hurts. And I understand that you feel like I don't care about you, but it's actually because I care about you and our relationship that I'm not taking this on. Because if I do, I know that I'm going to end up resenting you, or we're going to be in a big fight. This is what I can do, and this is where, you know, this is what I can't do, right? And that's what a boundary is. It's like what's okay for me and what's not okay for me. Not a wall, it's a fence with gates. I always say that. It's not walls, it's not putting up things between us. It's a fence that it lets the good in and it lets the bad out, and you open it sometimes to let more things in. To be a little flexible sometimes. You know what, normally I don't do this, but I'll do this, you know, I see you really right now. When it gets uncomfortable for me, I'm not going to be able to do it anymore, you know? And that's part of why boundaries are difficult, because a lot of people feel disappointed when you set them. I'm sure if anyone that has ever set a boundary with you, it is disappointing and it doesn't feel good. And you sometimes feel resentful, like, oh, you know, but I always do things for her. But she's allowed to say no, and he's allowed to feel like it's too much. And, you know, if you're not used to placing boundaries, you'll get a lot of pushback. Yes, definitely. If you're a person who's never placed boundaries, people will be like, are you joking? Like, they're not going to take it seriously. So I think that, I think even like the whole idea of like Shiva also is like such a great lesson for boundaries, right? Because Shiva is all about like, you go and you take the cue from the person sitting Shiva, and you don't hang around, right? We're not supposed to sit there like all day. Like, you go, you keep it brief, you see what the person needs, you leave at the end and you say your pasuk, and like, that's it, right? And like, we leave them alone and we take cues from them. We're not supposed to be trying to like be overly involved and making them laugh, and right? There's a boundary with that. So I think that that's important to kind of conceptualize also, that like, it's not always what we want to do or what we think is right. Sometimes it's just like stepping back and just sitting quietly, not saying a word, and then going, and like, that's enough. It's not fixing. You can't bring the dead person back. You can't make them feel better that the person's gone. That's something that they need to do on their own, you know? So that's something to keep in mind too, just about that. Not every problem is ours to fix. And there's guidelines within our religion even that allow us to remember that.
I like all these Judaism connections.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about them because, like, it's so much a part of our lives. Like, really, so much of our lives are boundaries, you know, by halacha, by minhag, by Torah. It's so simple for us, but at the same time, it's so difficult for us. And that's why, like, I feel like I want to remind people, like, if you're an observant Jew and this is what you are used to living with, like, it's not always comfortable, right? Halacha is not always comfortable. Jewish law is not always easy, you know? It's uncomfortable to tell your boss, oh, I can't go on Saturday to the lunch or whatever, but like, you do it. It's not even a question. It's uncomfortable to oh, can I have the kosher? Or tell your kid, no, you can't have it. It's not kosher. You know, he's going to throw the tantrum. But that boundary is firm, right? But then when it comes to other things with our kids, that boundary is like, I can't. I don't want to make them upset. You know, they're gonna be traumatized for life. Like, what do you mean? You told them they couldn't have the non-kosher candy. That was cool. You weren't regretting that boundary. But this boundary you're regretting, it's the same thing. Like, that's like the wellness of their soul. This is the wellness of their soul and their mental health, you know? Like, boundaries are good. It's not a bad thing. Sometimes we can be too rigid with our boundaries. That's not good. And that's kind of where we have to really introspect and look at why we're being so rigid. And we have to be flexible with them, right? But I think that overall, like, it's important to halacha is easier than setting new boundaries. It's true. That's what I'm saying. We have
more straightforward, that's for sure.
Yeah. And we have an easier time accepting them. We're just like, okay, this is what we do. But if you grew up religious also, that's just like always what you did. So it's second nature. And like, we don't regret that it disappoints people. Like, we're like, okay, but this is who I am. It's my religion. Respect it. Why can't we see the same thing? Think of this as your religion. My religion is I'm taking care of myself. I'm not letting people step all over me and drag me through the mud. You know?
Well, if someone gave us a blueprint of how to take care of ourselves, it might be as easy as halacha.
Right?
Not that halacha is easy.
No. It's hard. It's hard. Not sure if you spoke about this yet, but how does one know the balance of kibbud avim and boundaries? I find I'm often struggling with this. So it happens to be, I actually talk a lot to Rabbi Shai Schechter about this, because this is something that comes up a lot in my practice, is kibbud avim and boundaries. And he always says, like, that there's this idea that, like, with kibbud avim, that we don't have to, like, we're not obligated to our parents in kibbud avim with our money, right? With things that are, like, financially taxing for us. So if your parents, like, they want to go to an old age home, like they want to move into assisted living, you can help them find that assisted living. Halachically, like, according to kibbud avim, you can help them, but you don't have to pay for it. They're financially responsible for it, right? You don't ever have to, like, shell out money for your parents. That you're not bound to by the laws of kibbud avim. So he says it's the same thing emotionally. We don't have to suffer emotionally for our parents. We don't have to be emotionally drained. Our bank accounts don't have to be drained, and our emotions don't have to be either. So if we find that dealing with our parents is emotionally draining, but I don't just mean like your mom annoys you and she, you know, like, oh yeah, this is so messy, and not like little annoying things, because like we're all annoying, and you're annoying too, and when you're a mother, you're going to be annoying. But I mean really, like, emotionally draining you and harmful to your mental health. He says, like, you're allowed to take your distance, and you're allowed to put up those boundaries, and you're allowed to say, like, you know what, I can't do this for you, Mom, or I'm going to have to take some space, or I'm not going to be able to come for, you know, the holidays, or whatever it is that you have to do. But remember also that respecting your parents, honoring your parents according to Jewish law, like, it's really like acts of service, right? So it's like making sure that they're, you know, if they want to drink, they have a drink, that they have clothes, that if they need a ride to the airport, you give them a ride to the airport. It's not like I let you trample all over me and say whatever you want and insult me and tell me to stop eating carbs and then I'll never get married and my husband's a loser. That's not the same, right? And parents also need to be reasonable in, like, understanding what their children have to do for them, right? Like, we know that parents can't tell you who to marry, right? Like, you're not obligated to listen to them about that stuff. So I think that that's, you know, like, that's a boundary that, again, the Torah is very clear. Like, there are certain things that are not kibbud avim, that are not respecting your parents, that you don't have to listen to. And that's one of them. You know, it's not always, and parents will throw that line, what about respecting your parents? It's not respecting you to let you talk to me that way, or to let you insult my family, or talk down to my kids. Like, that's not what God intended when he said honor your parents, you know? So boundaries with parents is tough. But again, like, doable, and as long as it's always like, you have to just do it with respect. Like, you can set a boundary with respect. right? There might be a conflict, but that doesn't mean combat, right? Doesn't mean you're fighting and arguing and nasty. You're being very respectful, saying, you know what, this is hard for me. I feel like this is ruining our relationship. You know, for me to always be hearing these things from you, or feeling this way when I'm around. So this is how I'm going to change things to protect and to preserve our relationship. And I think people sometimes are more receptive. Other times they are, you know, are more resentful. But again, like that's not your responsibility how they react to your boundaries, you know? And just remember that your story, your life is being shaped by what you say yes to and what you say no to. So if you're unhappy in your life, you can blame people, but it's really like you need to set those boundaries stronger and take responsibility. So, yeah.
Lots of great points. You speak more about boundaries on some of your YouTube videos, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we covered a lot. Definitely check out Rachel's videos on boundaries. And sometimes you do other classes on boundaries, right?
I've done.
I feel like I've seen it a lot on your page.
So I talk a lot about it in my posts and stories, and I did a talk on it that's on my YouTube page. You can go to Rachel Tuchman LMHC on YouTube and have a talk there. Usually any of these like lives that I do, I record them, I save them, and it's on YouTube. So
that reminds me. Don't hang up until you show me how to save this live.
Yes. When we're done, you'll see like in the top right corner there'll be 3 dots. Save it to your phone. It'll say save, and then don't end the live though before you do that. First save it, and then you're gonna end the live, and then you can save it for 24 hours.
Oh, you mean when you hang up? Sorry guys for this end of conversation. Thanks for coming.
Right.
When I push. So I don't push end now. I wait for you to hang up, and then it will give me the 3 dots.
And then you should see it like in the right corner. You should even be able to see it now. See it now?
So in the right corner, it says end.
Okay, so when it says end, right, then save it. And then...
the save doesn't become an option for me.
Oh.
I don't know. Does anyone else have experience with this? What does this say? Do you have an Instagram page, or is Predator Factory your page? Are you talking to me or to Rachel? Rachel has an Instagram page.
Mine is Rachel. Yeah, LMHC. My favorite Rachel video is Boundaries on YouTube. I paid Rebecca to say that. No, I didn't. But she's like my friend since I was 7, so of course she's going to say that. So, I mean, it should be, like, usually it comes up, like, on the side. If anyone knows, then they can help you. But I know when I usually do a thing, maybe when I get off, it'll do it for you. That you can save it.
Okay, I'll wait for you to get off before I change anything. Okay. If anyone else, let me know, please.
Yeah, if anyone else, then
okay.
Yeah.
But well, thanks, Rachel.
Yes, she needs to leave and come back. It won't clear up. Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
So I mean, I guess just like summing up what we said, boundaries allow us to just like keep our integrity and be generous. And I think that's even, I think, like a Brene Brown line. She says, boundaries allow me to stay in my integrity and be generous. So when we're boundaried, we are kinder, we are more compassionate, we are happier, our relationships are better. It'll say share at the end and then save it. Oh, okay, awesome.
For me, I don't know.
Try. We'll see.
Okay, I'll try again.
Yeah, and when we have to stop caring so much about what people think. We have to just care about self-love and being kind, and through that we are kinder, nicer people. Mm-hmm. And remembering nothing is sustainable without boundaries. Again, just like I said earlier, like the Torah, the Jewish Bible, halacha, Jewish law is all about boundaries. That's how we sustain our lives, our religion, our culture, our tradition, our marriages, our children. Like that is how our lives are run, is through the boundaries of Torah and halacha and Jewish law. So I guess sometimes that's like easy for people when they realize that. They're like, oh, I guess I do know how to have boundaries and I do know how to stick to them. So I think that that's something that you should maybe think about and let that empower you That just like there are certain boundaries that you're very firm on because of your religion, with your children, with yourself, whatever it is, you can do the same with your families. If you remember that it's for a greater good, and that's what a boundary is. It's for the greater good. It is fences, not walls. And it is helping you to connect better with people, to have better relationships, to make you happier. And again, if you think about all the times that you gave and gave and gave and gave and gave, and how do you feel at the end? You don't feel good. That means that's a boundary issue. That means that you're not truly giving from a good space, and that you need to take a step back and say, there needs to be a limit to my giving. And just like, I was saying about what Rabbi Schechter said about Sarah's tent with that cloud over it, right? It wasn't just this heavenly cloud. It was her way of saying, like, this is, we have this like thin layer above the home, which is protecting us when we decide, like, no guests this week, or, you're going to take a week off from your Kiruv projects, Abraham, and stay home with me. That's what she was doing. She was safeguarding and protecting their home and their marriage. And that's what we need to do. We need to know when to say, like, not now. I'm not going to post this. I'm not going to, take this problem on. I'm not going to try to fix this. I'm going to let them take care of it. Doesn't mean that I'm abandoning them. It means that I'm not taking it on. I'm just being a supportive role, a cheerleader, And so someone messaged me, asked me and asked me, like, what do I do about my friend who's recently single? Like, she's so clingy and I have my own life. Be sensitive. Like, she's going through something and it's hard to be alone. And remember, think about how you would feel if you were suddenly, divorced and felt like you had nobody in the world. So have boundaries, have limits.